Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm sitting here with Terry Fortune. How do I even know Terry?
On accident, unfortunately.
It's like friends of girlfriend or something.
Yeah, that's
So
quite
like
literally it.
so like Sable worked at Vintage Stock and met Megan through Vintage Stock in Edmond, and then Megan is Ethan's girlfriend, and that's at least how I know Ethan, and then I know you sort of through just them in general.
Yeah,
but I guess more so through Ethan.
Yeah, at the point that we met, I was just friends with Ethan and Amy, Amy being Ethan's sister. Now Amy and I are married, so hey, more you know. Well, I know you know, but...
Yeah. Okay, so as usual, who are you? What do you do?
Oh, it's a deep philosophical question.
No, just very simply.
No. My name is Terry Fortune, as we've already established. Really, I am a very scatterbrained person who just really likes to talk about random things. Doing some work, I don't want to name my employer, but I'm doing some sales associate work right now, and I'm on a semester-long break from school, and I don't know, I just have an interest in telling people they're wrong and why they're wrong because it's fun. I mean,
okay, so what are you in school for? Also, where do you go to school?
What I'm in school for is whatever my flavor of the month is, really. I've bounced around. I started with graphic design, started looking at going into something that might have to do with medical something or another for a brief second. And last minute before enrolling, I changed it over to chemical engineering. And now I'm going back and forth between wanting to continue with chemical engineering and maybe going into master doctorate level psychology. I've just got way too many things that I find interesting and not enough focus to make it useful for any of it.
So what do you want to do?
Everything.
Well, what do you see yourself doing? I mean, you're married, you're kind of like going through life right now, you're in school sort of, you have a job sort of. Not that it's a sort of job, it's just that it's kind of a sort of job.
Yeah, it's definitely not what I intend on doing for the rest of my life.
And so, like, what is it that you do intend to do? And what seems more reasonable for you to choose, I guess?
I guess of the things that I could pick, ideally, I would like to do something that has to do with media, like graphics, or maybe, I mean, stuff like this would be really, really fun. And I'm looking at making a YouTube channel. Hey, plug.
You'll get every opportunity to plug at the end.
Okay. Well,
that's fine.
But really, I'm just a whole lot of undecided at the moment as far as professions. I've got a lot of interests. I need to work on, I guess, weeding out the stuff that is either impractical or not interesting enough to maintain a lifelong pursuit of.
As far as everything else, like, since you have so many interests and stuff, what would you consider yourself first? Given that this is just like a guess, but like, given the work that you've done as far as like graphic design goes, as far as media goes, I'd consider you an artist before anything else.
I guess that's fair, yeah.
And then maybe lately more of a debater in general terms.
Yeah. Professionally, I guess I've got more into art and maybe not even art if you want to go with a really good description, I guess it'd be more of like marketing and advertising than art. I mean, I certainly can't do anything to the level of like Megan or Sable, but they've also got a huge lead in education and training than I do.
But at the same time, like, I feel like you, even though you're not like as skilled of a quote artist, you have a like a good feel for what that is and like what you want it to be. And so maybe it's because you lean more towards the marketing side. So it's kind of more that you yourself aren't the one doing the art, but you understand what you want the art to be.
Yes. I've actually... This might sound sad for someone who considers themselves to be reasonably analytical, but I've never really put too much thought into why I have an interest in art. I definitely like the idea of the marketing aspect to it, in the sense of you can use, the colors and the, whatever to send like maybe subliminal messages or whatever to get people to maybe unknowingly kind of lean towards doing a thing. And, just taking marketing design, you're taking the art of it, which is fun and interesting to me, and you're also mixing in some psychology and saying, hey, let's see what we can get out of this.
So you're really more on the design side. And then more of like how that influences people. So what?
I know this is a big mess.
Well, I mean, it's hard because, like, maybe some people are like, some people, as soon as they graduate from high school or whatever, they like go like, I want to do this, and this is what I'm doing, and I'm not stopping until this is what I have accomplished. And then some people, like, they get out and they're like, I don't really know, and I'm just gonna try and survive until something sticks.
That's something that makes a lot of sense, in the sense while I was in high school, like, and I'm sure that this is going to make a lot of people cringe, but in high school I slept through literally the first 3 years of it. Like, did not care at all. The only time I was awake was lunchtime, obviously going from classroom to classroom, and during tests, where I would on average get an A or a high B, just because I was like, I don't want to fail, but I don't want to do the work. But right, slept through it all, did pretty well usually on tests, with only a handful of exceptions, some of those being math things. Obviously you can't do well on certain aspects of math without knowing the formulas, and if you sleep through the point where he's giving you the formula, then you're in trouble. But I still managed to not fail. So I didn't really start to get anything to come together as far as school goes. To
delve a bit more into this, I actually haven't personally gotten like the story of like your whole living situation. Like, I know like bits and pieces of it, but I don't really know all of it.
Okay, so I have a tendency to be blunt. I have no issue whatsoever sharing this story.
That's fine.
But like, I've had people cringe at the things that I've said about my family, but whatever. It is what it is. It doesn't bother me. Whenever I was... I'll start it all with everything being... both of my parents have had a back and forth with addiction, namely things such as cocaine and crack. And because of that, obviously, there are things that can happen to you legally and, financially and what have you whenever you're battling addiction. The early part of my life, we'd go back and forth between, doing reasonably well and doing just awful based off of, where they were at fighting with their addictions. There's some points where we were living in the spare bedroom at my grandmother's house, and there were other times where my parents were legitimately like most of the way through buying a house.
Yeah.
So just with my biological parents, I've seen, you know, some ups and downs. But there's a point where the addictions were so bad that my mom kicked my dad out, and we went and lived in a homeless shelter. Forget how old I was. I think I was in, it was probably second grade.
Okay.
I think it was second or third grade. So there's a point where my mom kicked out my dad. Then after we were in this shelter, we moved in with a family. We moved, you know, from house to house with different family members. Ended up with my grandpa, being my mom's dad. Sorry. And then the grandmother that I lived with was my dad's mom earlier in life, just for clarification there. But living with my grandpa, my mom ended up, you know, basically going back into being like pulled into the addiction, and that resulted in my grandfather being stuck with having to care for us, and he had a 14-hour a day, like 5 or 6 days a week job. And it was really.
How many siblings do you have?
I've got a youngest. The youngest is a brother, and I've got a sister right next in line after him, and then my brother Brandon, who just recently turned 18 and moved out of the home he was adopted to. And then there's me.
So you're the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so were you pretty much just raised by your grandparents?
Well, no, actually, right at this point in the story, I'm about 11 years old, and because of the problem with the addiction there, my grandpa having so many hours that he was working, he didn't feel like he was capable of adequately taking care of us. Plus, this was a bad neighborhood anyway, so if he's not home, then we're going to likely be out around the kids in the neighborhood, and he didn't want us to end up like his daughter did, being my mom. So he turned us over to DHS, and I was actually picked up while I was at school by a police officer and taken to an emergency shelter called the Pauline E. Mayer, which I believe at this point in time is actually closed down. I don't know the details on why, but I imagine it has something to do with the budget shortfall. But
has this also been in like Oklahoma City?
Yeah, most of it was Oklahoma City. I've lived in a bunch of places though. I went from OKC to Moore with my cousin, who's the person who adopted my 2 brothers. And then from Moore, I went to Shawnee, and then from Shawnee to Oklahoma City, back to Shawnee, back to Oklahoma City. Then I think, if I'm not missing anything, I went from there to Piedmont, and then Piedmont was it for the rest of it, which is what leads into us meeting. But while I was in foster care, I was a trouble kid. Basically, I didn't want to pay attention to anybody. I was, for the most part, depressed for the entire time, the entirety of it. I didn't start coming out of that depression until I actually moved here to Piedmont. Made dumb decisions throughout all of it that there's a little bit of regret in, but at the same time, I don't think I would be who I am had I not gone through that.
Well, it's also just like a part of the learning process that if you didn't make those mistakes, then it's just who you are now. Continue.
Okay. Bouncing around from home to home, there's a few times that were stuck out as far as big events. Like there's a point where I went to Michigan and got to walk on one of the Great Lakes out there by Flint. I don't remember which lake it is because I don't remember where Flint, Michigan is. But then there's, I end up while I'm in Piedmont, I end up in a foster home where, I think I was there for maybe 2 or 3 years, but a whole lot of me rebelling and them trying to suppress my rebellion, and eventually it gets to a breaking point where, and I'm like 18 or 19 at this point, so I technically shouldn't be able to move to another foster home, but I called my caseworker, and I'm like, look, I'm done with this place. I'm either walking out and I'm trying to make it on my own, or you need to find a new place for me to stay at.
Yeah.
Well, I land in less than a week. I believe, unless it's happened again since then, this is the only time that this has ever happened in our state. But I ended up moving as someone who's past the age of aging out to live with this elderly couple who basically started, who were in Piedmont, who were the start of me not being a terrible little brat, I guess you could say. And then through them is how I met the Stewarts up at the Baptist church up here. And, it's how I was introduced to Amy and like all of the great people that I know from out here. So that's a pretty condensed version of it. I could have...
Yeah. Well, no, that's fine. And we have time. But what was your sort of rebelling and why?
At different stages, and the way I rebelled kind of manifested itself in different ways. But I think you could mostly attribute it to me being just generally mad, not at any one person or thing. Because really, I wasn't mad at my parents to the extent you might think most people would be.
I think you'd just be mad because the world hates you in a way. Maybe. I really don't. I don't really have a way that I can eloquently put it, but like I was just mad at everything, mad at everyone, and because of the way I felt, I was very much so not interested in going with the status quo. I didn't want to do school. I didn't want to, do any of the chores, and I honestly I still kind of have a problem with getting things done in a timely fashion as far as like housework and stuff. But like as bad as I am now, I was specifically going, no, I will not do this. Example, there's one time this was in Shawnee, foster mom was like, hey, I need you to, I might have been grounded or something, and she was like trying to punish me, but she was like, I need you to get the laundry and put it in the machine. And I was like, I don't want to. And she's like, do it. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I went and I grabbed all of the laundry that I had, and I put it in there, and like all of it that I could grab at once, and I tossed it in. I got it started, and apparently, and I honestly can't recall if I did it intentionally or not. I may have, but apparently I left a huge percentage of her clothes specifically in the basket of the stuff that didn't go in. And she flew off the handle on that and was like, you passive aggressive. I mean, did you have a number of like bad foster parents, or really just...
Really, I didn't have any awful parents in the sense of what most people think whenever they think bad foster parents. Like, I was never sexually abused. I was never beat. I was never, like, I guess, verbally abused where people were like, you're good for nothing. Or like, the closest thing to that I have ever had was there was one instance with this same Shawnee foster mom. She's like, you're going to end up making me have a heart attack. Well, about 2 weeks later, she actually has a heart attack. Wow. That crushed me. Like, I was devastated. I was like, I nearly killed this woman. Well, I went and visited her in the hospital, and she like started crying. She's like, you didn't do this. This isn't your... And I was just like really mouthy, and I was like,
honestly, as far as like bouncing around different foster homes in Oklahoma, I think you got really lucky without getting, any of like the worst of the foster parents, honestly.
I think, and really, I really only have my experience and the experience of those that I've spoken to. But I really don't think that the percentage of bad foster homes is really all that high. I think it's just because the bad ones are really bad. They're the only ones that are ever talked about, and you hear about them and you're like, wow, that's awful, how could anyone do that? And it's like, yeah, that is awful, but for the number of times that happens, if you look at all the times that it didn't happen, which doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to stop the bad from happening. It just means that it might not be as bad as it looks. Like really, the worst I ever had was maybe a little heavy-handed on, you know, reactions to my stupidity.
Yeah.
But
it's all just a bad situation.
It is.
To begin with.
Yeah. Ideally, you should have parents who are going to make good decisions and raise you in a way that you're not going to be self-destructive, which you can't always do as a parent, I understand, but you know, there's being there. That's usually a good first step. And like, I know that might sound bad because I as it is right now, I feel like I've got a good relationship with both of my biological parents. Very, very factual with the way I try to state things, though, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, things were bad between us at that point because they, for the most part, just weren't there for a lot of points in my life in the early years. But, yeah.
And then, darn, I had a question, and then it, like, fizzled away because
I know
being
that
attentive.
feel.
Yeah, okay. So, regarding how you were being like sort of a rebellious brat or whatever, what the heck happened to you for you to be like, because what I know of Terry now is that you're smart, you know what you're talking about, you really get like in depth in the things that you care about.
Okay, so my whole life, like the entirety of my life, even from like before most of what I can recall of my life, people have always been like, you're smart, you're brilliant, you know, whatever. And like, I guess like that might have somehow contributed to some of the things that I did that got me in trouble. Like, you know, with the passive aggressive thing there, instead of, you know, yelling and hitting and, you know, breaking stuff, I'd be like, you're not going to have laundry, you know, whatever.
Yeah. So you're more of like a, like, actively attentive and like smart enough to know how to mess with the rules.
Yes. That's a pretty accurate way to do it. And there's whenever I was in Shawnee, one of the things I did, I basically got away with it in terms of, you know, the foster parents never catching me, but my foster siblings and I would like go out in the backyard sometimes and we'd like, you know, smoke pot or whatever, and, you know, just stupid things, you know. And also, I know people are going to do it, and I'm not going to be like, hey, don't do it. Although I don't think drugs of any sort are good, just because of the background I have with people being irresponsible because of drugs. If you're going to do it, don't use an aluminum can. Bad fumes come off of that metal whenever you heat it.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then there are other things, like I snuck out of another one of the houses. I only did this once, but I snuck out, I think it was like 10 o'clock, didn't come back until like 6 in the morning, you know. I'd intentionally try to manipulate foster siblings into doing things for me unwittingly that would push the buttons of my foster parents, you know, to try to make them mad. You know, just
evil genius.
Well, I was again, I was just kind of generally upset with everything and everyone. And then I ended up meeting George and Betty Mason. I think at the point that I moved in, they were both in their early to mid 70s. At this point, I think they might be in their 80s. I need to visit them. They only live right around the corner from me now. But like legitimately the nicest people I've ever met in my life, and kind of by their example is how I came to not being, you know, so manipulative, or I guess maybe even vindictive.
You didn't have a reason to.
I didn't. That might be what it was, is they, like, even the few times that I didn't necessarily make great decisions, they weren't spiteful or anything. And that was I guess the difference between them and all of the foster homes that I had up to that point. It's like, I don't know. Two amazing people that I have no idea how they ever came into existence, but they did, and I'm very grateful for it.
Well, in the same way that like very, very evil people come up in the world, statistically enough, very, very nice people can come up in the world too, and because very nice people come up in the world, those people get foster kids.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not enough of those people end up with foster kids. They. This is kind of tangential, so I don't care. You can cut it out if you want. I guess best way to start. They had a foster son that was there before me that was exceptionally, I guess problematic. I hate using that word for completely unrelated reasons, but he was a problematic child, right?
Yeah.
And he basically threatened them, and he was a big muscle bound kid. He was taller than me, and I'm 6'1" maybe. He was built too, but because of him, whenever they kicked him out, they were like, all right, we're done. Well, he had the same caseworker that I had, and she's who I called whenever I was like, I'm moving out of this house. Well, she got a hold of George and Betty and was like, I've got this kid who has an emergency situation. He needs to be moved out. If I can't find someone to take him, he's out on the street, because I was 18 or 19 at that point. And, foster care, you turn 18, you're out in most cases. And I don't think that they were immediately kind of receptive to the idea, just because of the terror that they went through with the last kid.
Yeah.
And they generally tried to stay with younger foster kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this one's older than the last one, and the last one was basically Satan incarnate.
Yeah.
They're like, well, okay, I guess, so I literally moved, 3-4 miles up the road from the foster home that I was in to their place, and they met me, and they loved me immediately, and they were like, yeah, this kid's great, whatever. And I was still kind of kind of huffy and puffy about the situation that I just walked out of.
Yeah.
So anyway, again, tangential.
No, that's fine. What was it about them that really influenced you, and how do you see them reflected in you now?
One of the things, one of the big defining things that makes them who they are is their faith. And up to that point, I'd kind of been like, yeah, I guess I believe in God, because my dad's mom, she was very, very into her faith. All the way up until the time that she died, which was while I was in foster care. But I didn't find out about that until years after it had happened. But that was the defining thing that made George and Betty, in the way, and I'm speaking of them in the past tense, which kind of sad, I guess. They're still alive, but it's what makes them who they are. They've gone through some tremendously difficult things, and through it all, their faith is what kept them afloat, and that is very much reflected in the way they live their lives and the way they interact with the kids that they have with them. And while I was living with them, I guess it started rubbing off on me, and it's when I instead of just going I guess God's a thing, to okay, I'm going to actively make the decision to.
That is truly whenever someone's faith really speaks more than just them telling you about oh, I love Jesus, but it's another thing to really
see that in
and in that way, that's sort of why a lot more Christians are more impactful, because rather than just believing in their Christianity, they live their faith.
Yeah, something that, and this, chalk it up to a no true Scotsman, if you will. I think a lot of the people who claim to be Christian, right now, aren't Christian in the sense of the faith, but more so in the sense of there are a lot of people who are, and I like some of the morals that it's based in, therefore I'm going to call myself that. But then whenever you confront them with, details on it, they kind of, and they start floundering. And like, I'm not even gonna lie. There are certain aspects of my life that I don't live, I guess, adequately in the sense of how a Christian should behave. Example, I'm very, very much more interested in someone's ideas than their feelings, which can make me come across as a bull in a, china cabinet whenever it comes to having a discussion.
And I don't really, me personally, I've never really taken offense to that. But as far as like, Christianity goes, I don't really think that like approaching things in a more like idea-based way rather than a feelings-based way, I don't think that really like contributes or discounts sort of how your faith should be in a way.
This is true. What I mean by that is something that was very, very much evident with George and Betty is like if something was happening that was kind of a rough situation, they would kind of gently give you the information. Like they would, they'd be nice about it. I've had people come to me with questions about hard situations, and instead of coddling their feelings, I'm like, "There's your problem," and then they're like, "Oh, heartless," and it's like, I mean, it is what it is. But again, I'm more of an analytical kind of person than I am grounded in feelings, I guess.
And I think that's fine. But I guess going back to them, do you think that the way that they lived their lives and then treated you that way, do you think that reflected something that was already in you, or did you think that it really just steered you way off the path that you were?
I know that I've always, like, according to things that I've heard from family members that have known me, longer than I can recall, I've always been kind of a protective person, and I care about people in the sense of what's, I guess, best for them as opposed to what they want. Like, I don't care about what you want if what you want is stupid.
Exactly.
And I'll let you know that I think it's stupid if you ask. Sometimes you don't even have to ask, depending on what it is. But I think they probably helped mold those things that I had in me that I guess most people might consider good in a characteristic kind of a way, like in a way that is more conducive to not just outright being a jerk to people that might not agree with me or whatever, which I can still be that depending on the situation and in some cases, but I try. They very much like had an impact on how I ended up, because I don't think that I would be who I am right now had I not spent the time with them that I did. Another thing is they also helped me. Also with the help of Amy, because at this point I was dating Amy, and with the help of her family, because her parents and her brother were like family to me, basically from the time that I started hanging out with Amy. But like all the group of them, it wasn't just the Masons, it was also the Stewarts after a certain point in time that kind of helped lead me into not being an idiot, because the whole time that I was at UCO, the worst decision that I made was, spending too much time playing video games. Like, I think there was maybe one time that I drank, and even then it was only a little bit, and it was like, hard lemonade, which most people who do drink are like, that's not even like, so like it helped me not make decisions that could have potentially developed into things that were like serious negatives in life. Like I didn't go to parties or anything, like I tried to stay away from the things that from my past experience and understanding of the world associated with stupid decisions.
Well, honestly, I think that you could have gone, like, especially given like who you are and the situations that you've been in, you either could have just become your parents in their addictions, or you could have just gone exactly in the opposite direction, and gladly you went in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's something that I am kind of, I guess, in a maybe ironic way, very grateful for the choices of my parents for.
Yeah.
Is for some people, like, you have to see and do it firsthand to see the negatives that certain, lifestyles and decisions, cause. But whenever you're the child of a person who's making those decisions, like during the time that they're making those decisions, like you see and experience the negatives in a way that you can still recall it completely. Because, if you're strung out for, 3 months straight, there's a lot of that you're not going to be able to recall. You don't see the monster that you're basically making of yourself for the sake of pursuing your high.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to see that. They're going to remember that. They're going to see what it does to you. And whenever they get to a certain point, barring situations that, and I think this is absolutely disgusting, but it happens, where the parents force this addiction onto their children so they can, quote unquote, share the experience. I've seen that happen a lot, and it's so sad. But with the exception of situations like that, I feel like there's a point where it comes down to the individual who is the child growing up, where they have to say, I'm either not going to live like this or I'm going to. And I think I've seen the statistics, and most people tend to end up living a lot like their parents do in that regard. But like, it really comes down to an individual's choice at that point.
Yeah.
And you either live the way that you've been living or you stop living that way.
Yeah.
And I think seeing them live that way showed me what I didn't want and how to avoid doing that. So I had fantastic role models in the sense of this is what you shouldn't do.
And then you have fantastic role models in the sense of what you should do.
Yes, I did, but it came a lot later. But okay, to be fair, not the role models that I had in between the two extremes there weren't awful. They just also weren't stellar in certain aspects.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And okay, so since this segues nicely into your faith, what you believe, what were you before the Masons, and what are you, or what were you like directly afterwards, and what are you now?
In a sense of, like, what do I identify with as a...
What do you believe? What do you...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Before I was with the Masons, I guess the best way to identify me wouldn't even be definitely not atheist, because based on the time that I spent with my grandmother, I did believe in God. I just didn't care.
Yeah.
It's not even being agnostic. I don't know if there is a term for it. Maybe
believing in God but not caring.
Yeah. Is there? I mean, that was basically it. Like, if there's a word for that, plug that in anywhere that definition is. But that's what I was. Like, I believed, I just didn't care, because I didn't see any reason why I should care, other than the time I spent with my granny, and she was a fantastic person, and I honestly don't know why she didn't beat her sons more than she may have. I've heard that she wasn't against that kind of punishment, but oh man, she apparently didn't do it enough. But anyway, joking aside, like, after her, the role models that I had were a lot of them were Christians. They weren't, and I feel bad saying it because I still somewhat talk with some of them. They're not Christians in any way that is comparable with the Masons. And I feel like this is exceptionally judgmental, but the way it reflected in their lives wasn't even remotely comparable to the way it reflects in the lives of George and Betty Mason.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I had to work with. I had the people that were, judgmental, or, and were basically whenever you're a non-Christian looking at, Christians, and the people that you don't like, those are the people that I was basically, being raised with for certain points in my life. And it didn't really, help me to see the faith as anything good. I just saw it as a bunch of, rules.
Yeah.
Then moving in with George and Betty, I saw it as like, not just like, rules that you willingly impose on yourself, I guess, and more of a, like, this is something that has good things as a consequence to the lives of those who implement it the right way.
You learned the reason for the rules.
Yeah.
And so where does that lead to, like, who you are now?
It's helped me really. I think that I would probably be, had I not gone through that experience with Masons, I would be that douchebag on the internet who argues with you just to make you feel bad about your decisions for being a Christian. Honestly, like I'm sure that would be me, because I love arguing. I'm usually pretty good at it, and I've frequented the internet just for the sole purpose of arguing in the past, and occasionally I look up arguments just for the fun of it. I would probably be that guy, and most people who've been on the internet have seen that guy if they've looked at anything that has to do with faith. But I'm not that guy.
So how? I guess I've never really gotten that specific with you. Obviously, like, you go to church, you, like, have a family of people who go to church, and so like, so I was Catholic, and so like there's a level of being, like, into the church and, like, not being into the church. And so, like, the people who are, like, into the church, like, everything that the church says, like, yep, I'm right there with you. But then there's, like, it's like, oh yeah, like, I like a lot of the things there, but, like, I don't really like that one there. But, I'm still with you.
Are you asking about, like, where I land kind of in...
in your faith spectrum, I guess. There is one.
There are a lot of things that I guess people who are, like, exceptionally into it would disagree with me just on a kind of a fundamental level. And most of these things kind of reflect on my political views, I guess. Example, the gay marriage thing. Like, I don't think that my faith should be any reason why these people can't have a legally binding union. Sure. I mean, on top of that, there are a bunch of other faiths that they could, utilize to become bound like that.
But, like, because I know your political views. I don't know your faith views. So do you think that gay people should get married?
I don't care if they get married. Like, I really don't. And that part of that comes from, the things like judge not lest ye be judged. In context, are saying don't judge people unless you are willing to be judged by the same measure, and then even then only judge those that would be like your brother, and your brother in the faith would be the most applicable, area for that. So it does no one any good to judge those who already don't care about the faith to any standard that would be measured for those who would be in the faith. So like, if you're not a Christian, I don't care, what you do. I would like to see more people be Christians just based on, the idea of, what that leads to. And, people who truly implement it do see results in the way their behavior would change, I guess. But like, if you have no interest in it, I'm not going to force it down your throat, and I'm not going to judge you for making decisions that most people make purely based off of faith with no other. Now, if I find that it's something that has a reasonable argument outside of faith, and it doesn't make any sense to be opposed to it. Example, don't kill people. Then yes, I will. Of course. I will like argue 7 ways to Sunday, and but things that are arbitrary to someone who's not in the faith, like things that they don't care about, like I'm not going to try to hold anyone by that standard. I'm not gonna try to impose rules on people that should really only be, relevant for those who, believe and care to try to, make the actions to be that. Because, there's believing and then there's actually, being.
Yeah. And so you'd rather live the Christian lifestyle, but not to the point of being like Bible thumping evangelist.
I would
is
like
kind of what I'm hearing.
I guess you could put it that way. I'd like to have people led to Christ. I don't want them to feel like I'm being militant with my faith, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because that is a very, very poor way to go about getting people into it, I guess. as I've seen with my own experience with people of faith.
Yeah. And so I guess let's just, for the sake of asking the questions, so you believe that when you die you go to heaven?
Yes.
Or you judgment and then heaven?
Yeah.
You believe that Jesus Christ died for our sins?
Yes.
How does that apply to the way that you live your life?
In the sense of how do I treat people, or decisions
that
I make?
And just decisions that you make too.
I don't. I try to not make bad decisions in the moral sense. I don't. Well, okay. I guess I do argue with people, but I don't try to insult people. Mm-hmm. I don't try to. I don't know. It's just like for me, there's a kind of a listed just kind of set of behaviors, and it's kind of I haven't really put much thought into do's and don'ts, because I don't want to make it just a a binary list of do's and don'ts, because I feel like that makes it less of a
it's less of a faith thing, and it just becomes a rule book.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got certain things that I do that I wish that I didn't, that I should work on, like my brashness and discussions. I'll play devil's advocate. I can usually argue both sides of the argument, and I'll be judgmental with people's intellect, which is something that I wish I had a better handle on. But whenever your values are based on ideas as opposed to works and what have you, and feelings, that hand in hand with it.
Okay. Who's going to heaven?
Okay. I really...
And this isn't like me challenging you. I just want to know what you believe.
Yeah. I don't have a solid basis in, a foundation on the logic for this, as far as like what I've read in scripture. But I feel like, children who haven't been born yet, who die before, coming out and seeing anything. Yeah. I feel like they, and if I find anything that, would contradict that, then, you go with what you get. Yeah. But, based off of the things that I've seen thus far, I haven't seen anything that says otherwise on it. Unborn children that, die in the womb or whatever, I feel like they would make it. And then people who legitimately, have the like noticeable change in their lives, like if and they obviously have to say they're a Christian, which I know it's it might not be popular with people, but again, I'm in the sense of feelings, it's not much of something I care about. Be upset, you either do something about it or you don't. It's a decision. That's what it all comes down to. You have to make the decision to follow, and have that reflected, or if you don't, then you don't make the cut. It's not a matter of you're a good person and you're a bad person. Bad person goes to hell, good person goes to heaven. If they don't make the decision to, accept Jesus, then that's, hey, it sucks.
Yeah, but you still want to, I'm asking, but you still want to care for those who have decided against it.
I'm not saying people who are against it are like, dirt, you make the decision or you don't. And like you can't force somebody to do. I mean, when you think about forcing somebody into the faith, you see things like maybe you want to go back a little bit into the history of the U.S. You're looking at the time where everybody's a Christian, and if you're not, then you get killed. That's no way to live. That's no way to implement the faith, because you're going to inevitably have people who are just wearing the mask, saying "I am," and then it's like that's not going to do them any good in the sense of salvation. You can say you're something all day. That doesn't make you it if you're not it. I want the faith to be represented in a way that it's not a you do this or we hate you. It's like we really, really want you to do this so that you can experience what we believe comes after life, and I don't know how well that adhered to the question.
No, I think that's a great way to answer it. And so like more of what I'm trying to get at is like what value is the human person, both the human person who does believe in Christ and the human person that doesn't, and so that hopefully, and I think the right answer as a Christian should be, I love them both.
Oh yeah. Okay, that was again like I'm really bad about losing track and going off. So I see because everyone's a person. It's not a like in the sense of value. If anything, the people who have yet to see Christ, like they should be valued more in the sense of life, because the worst thing that's going to happen to a Christian is they're going to die, and then you're there. Well, judgment and all of that. But I mean, you don't want. I'll put it in a hypothetical. If there were a situation where, and this is going to sound awful, and it's supposed to, because it's for the comparison. If there were a situation where I were confronted with, let all of these Christians die or let all of these non-Christians die, and it were at equal numbers. So in a quantifiable sense, there was no difference.
Are you familiar with the trolley problem?
I'm not.
It's like a train. You can like pull like a lever to make it choose two different directions. And,
that's exactly the kind of ultimatum I'm trying to dress it up as. I may not have dressed it up with all of the things that doesn't make it sound like I'm Hitler, but I was just kind of hoping it was implied.
Philosophical thing.
I feel like the only good decision that could be made in the sense of the perspective of being a Christian is that you would have the Christians die in that situation, because if the non-Christians die, that's it for them. Like, their chances are up. And realistically, there's no religious litmus test where you can determine that every person that was in there was a Christian. But just say that they factually were, right? In a sense, I guess the people who aren't Christians should have more value in the sense of the here and now, because you want them to make the same decision that you did if you truly care about people, right?
And so what is your view on the soul?
The soul. In what respect are we?
It's kind of interesting because like all of the stuff that you go really in depth about is like very like grounded in logic and stuff, and I'm asking more feely questions.
Oh yeah.
But like, what is your view on the soul? Like,
feel like the best way to say it is the soul is you, the body is the vessel, I guess. Like, again, caring about what's good for a person and caring about their feelings are two different things to me. So like, if and you know, you can take every perspective and put it to an extreme, you know, especially if like it seems to be exceptionally easy to do that with most things that are faith-based. But I really I feel like the soul is the person. So whenever you're talking about the person, you're not talking about the body so much as you are like what makes the person them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. I'm not entirely sure how to put that in words beyond that, though.
And so I guess logically, the soul is what goes to heaven or hell.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know, you can't take your body with you.
Okay, and then what's this other general question I normally bring up? What is it that you want for the world? I guess, like, what do you want people to be like? What do you think people should follow and act like and behave?
I think the ideal situation, I guess, would be those who have voluntarily help those who do not have. I get something like this. I feel like inevitably comes down to policy.
Sure.
I don't think you should be able to force something onto someone in terms of, you know, charity who doesn't want to do it. But I don't think that those who do not have shouldn't be helped. It's kind of a tricky thing, and I feel like it's like very, very like you know, razor sharp line that you're trying to tread on there. But example, Amy and I, we aren't, you know, by any means the wealthy, right?
Yeah.
But we try to help those who we know don't do as well as us, because you know, you look at America and you see, you know, the standard of poverty that we have.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at that and you might go, oh, you know, the people who are above the people below are just, you know, awful because they have so much and these people down here don't. But, like, you could literally do that by looking at the people at the bottom of our stack and comparing them to the people in, you know, other countries that are doing just way worse than we are. And I understand that, you know, life conditions aren't amazing for the people at the bottom of the stack in the US, but there are people who have it infinitely worse in other countries, and like, you know, send the aid to where it's needed most. Yeah. And, you know, work your way from the bottom up. So, like, you know, Amy and I kind of, I guess, based on that logic, we try to, you know, help donate and help kids in other countries. Of course, I don't like the way there's basically a pyramid scheme with most of the companies that you have to go through to do that. But, you know, short of actually going there, you can't really do it any other way.
But at least the best way, like, ideally for you, is like helping the most needy and then working your way up from there.
And I also strongly believe that it has to be a voluntary thing for those who do help those that are less fortunate. You know, the problem with that is greed.
Yeah. How would you... Obviously not... Because, again, these are more feely questions than thinky questions, but how would you want people to voluntarily make that decision?
Well, for a lot of people, like one of the ways that falling into being comfortable with giving, like, just clicks is a lot of people who are like genuinely living the Christian life, I guess. Like, I feel like for them, giving is just more of of course, you just do it.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with, don't force someone to be a Christian. Don't force your moral standards on people who don't, agree with it. I don't feel right forcing anybody to do basically anything that doesn't have, like, if it's an action that doesn't, like, directly cause harm to someone because of you, I don't feel like it's something that should be restricted, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think I mixed my words up there.
No, you're
okay. Yeah.
If everyone in the world followed what you're proposing, do you think we would flourish?
Following the will to voluntarily
that and
give?
Really just like Christian lifestyle and
I think so. There are a few things that might lack that are kind of sought out in society at the moment, but some of those things aren't really things that have anything to do with improving life for people so much as just having the result of going, aha, this, and I really, really enjoy learning things of basically any sort, which is part of the problem I'm having with, nailing down a thing to
That's
do
fine.
with my life. Everything interests me, but also because of having that perspective, I understand that if you don't focus on something, you don't get anywhere with anything,
Yeah.
And we've got so many problems right now that there are a lot of things that we could probably do without, as a species as a whole, until we get things straightened out. Of course, you're always going to run into the problem of people are going to make terrible decisions when they have power because, they want to have power. It's hard to do anything to get across to those people because they're like, no, that's nice. People are dying, but I have power.
Yeah.
So everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a pretty natural thing for a lot of people. Complex things need complex answers, I suppose, but I don't know. Went off on a trail and lost that one.
No, I mean, it's fine. I guess just in general, like, if everyone followed a certain way of life, would it fix things, And so, I would hope that...
Something interesting, I guess, if you want to look at in the sense of, making a deck for Magic the Gathering, right? You want that deck to do, like, one thing, and you want it to do it that one thing well. Like, I guess if you could organize the things that we're doing as a species in a way and trim the fat, that could, potentially be beneficial. Of course, I have no way of seeing the future. There could definitely be serious side effects to it, but
Playtesting.
Yeah, exactly. You got to play test it. Of course, play testing in real life with something of that sort results in lots and lots of dead people.
Yeah.
Potentially all of them, but yeah.
How different is it from
what we're doing right now?
doing?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, as far as that goes, circling back, but it's sort of more difficult. Normally at this point, I try and circle back like, oh, here are the things you believe, and here's the things that you want to do. But it's a little bit harder to circle back whenever you don't know what you want to do.
Yeah. If I could rank them in or I guess list them in no particular ranking order, I would really like to do something that stuck with design in the sense of advertising, maybe. Be it, images or video. I've got a kind of an equal interest in both, and the fortunate thing for video is, you have to be able to do the image thing if you're going to do the video thing. Beyond that, we're looking at probably the I guess psychology side of it, because that's something that I find exceptionally interesting.
Yeah.
And you just have to really go far into it if you want to do anything at all with it. And then I guess the third thing would probably be something maybe in chemical engineering. Because, like, again, these things are all over the place.
Yeah.
But most people, it's like I'd want to be in music or music business or music education. For me, it's like I want to go in this far direction, and that far direction.
Do you think you'd be able to put them together?
Chemical engineering could potentially go reasonably well into advertising, I guess, as could advertising into psychology. But I don't see psychology and chemical engineering mixing very well.
Yeah. But then all of these potential routes, how does that relate to your faith and how you live that way?
For the psychology thing, it comes down to helping people, but me being me, I'd have to probably focus more on the research side of things, because nobody wants a psychologist who's going to say, no, you've just made a stupid decision and you should stop that.
Hey, some people need that.
I completely agree with that statement, but most people aren't willing to take that and still pay you. So, if you want to keep work, you can't scare away all the clients. That's realistically the way that I see the psychology side of things, going through. Chemical engineering, it mostly comes down to, I don't know that it really has a whole lot that it can correlate with faith, other than gives me the capacity to do more to help people, because I'm going to have, a significantly higher income doing that than, most jobs in marketing or advertising. And then marketing and advertising can be used for basically everything. I mean, honestly, it's propaganda, right? If you want to really get to it, when you're doing advertising, you're making propaganda for maybe your client's thing that they're trying to sell, or an ideology, or you're trying to sell something, and that can be done for everything, more or less.
I think you're a nicely well-rounded person. I always love having long conversations with you, and I really respect your approach to really like how you approach your faith and how you approach your lifestyle and what you want to do, even if you're not as like decided. I really appreciate and respect what you do, or at least what you're trying to do. Plug your YouTube.
Okay. Really, it hasn't been, the channel hasn't been made yet, because I am disgusting as far as a level of procrastination. I've got a bunch of ideas, though, that I've been kind of listing off on my old phone that's been deleted. Okay, so I gotta make the list again. But I'll whenever I do come up with all of the little details on it, I'll just give you a link, and you can plug it in the description to this.
Yeah, sure. But then you have like a couple YouTube channels now.
We can plug Mr. and Mrs. Fortune is the name of one YouTube channel. Well, okay, really, it's the only one that's going to be seeing any work as far as the stuff that I've already made. Realistically. I, for the most part, I think I'm done with Let's Plays, unless it's kind of an analytical, strategy thing. So
that's fine.
That's not important. But yeah, we're planning on trying to come up with some just fun things to watch, or I'll be helping Amy with making music. The name of the channel is Mr. and Mrs. Fortune, more or less, because we couldn't come up with anything more interesting, and my last name, I guess, is interesting enough.
Yeah.
You know.
And conveniently enough, today is St. Patrick's Day, isn't it?
Oh, it is, isn't it? I forgot about that.
So, you know,
Yeah.
for whatever that's worth,
Yeah.
having you on the podcast today.
Woo!
So yeah, there's that to plug you. Twitter, if you want people to follow you on Twitter, or you don't want people to follow you on Twitter.
I don't have a problem with people following me on Twitter, but if people don't like being disagreed with and don't like arguing, they may not want to follow me. But really, I think I've got like realistically, I think I've got like 3 Twitters. 2 of them are more or less not being used. So you have to make sure you find the right one.
Which one do you use so that we can...
Whichever one it is that you favorited the tweet from.
If anything, I'll find the link and put it on the thing.
I'm not an organized person, so...
And then, as for me, I always try and, I guess, end the interview podcast with my 3 things would make up my sort of religion. And so it goes, love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong. Thank you.